Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, a ridiculous neighbor Karen slaps my disabled kid and claims that she cannot be arrested because she is a girl. Let's dive right into the story. The first one starts like this. Just to get this out of the way, I love my kid more than anything else in the world, and my kid happens to be autistic. Him being autistic does not completely transform our lives, but it has led to us developing a few habits, such as going on therapeutic walks to pick up rocks that interest him. However, I enjoy these walks just as much as him, and sometimes I think I may even enjoy them more. But on one particular walk, we ended up having an encounter that blew up way beyond anything I could have possibly anticipated. So, while me and my son were quietly enjoying ourselves, bothering nobody at all, one of our neighbors approached us. I sort of recognized her, but she lived several streets over and we had never really talked before. Maybe a hello in passing at most, but I think almost all of our interactions had just been waving at one another in the distance. With that in mind, I'm sure you can understand why I was completely stunned that she planted herself in the middle of the sidewalk in front of us and tried to start a fight. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. At first I thought maybe something was wrong, that she needed our help, but she just stood in front of us, blocking our progress and demanding to know what we were doing. Maybe she was just curious and phrasing it badly? Well, that's what I hoped at the time, but then my son shyly hid behind me. I explained how picking up rocks was very soothing for him. Karen did not like that explanation, not one bit. She accused me of lying and said that we were clearly damaging neighborhood property. I guess she thought that we were stealing these rocks from decorative displays in yards, but even when I reassured her that these are just taken from the sides of trails and nature walks, she laughed in my face and said that was a likely story. I was starting to get annoyed around this point, mainly because she was attacking my son's precious hobby. It would have been one thing if she just wanted to be combative and rude to me, but going after my son was simply unacceptable. Period. However, I didn't want to escalate things further, so I just blew this Karen off, turned around and coaxed my son onwards. We returned back home, and while I did need a few hours to cool off and get my irritation under control, I thought that would be the end of it. I could not have been more wrong. The next time me and my son went out a couple days later, we only managed to get a couple blocks before Karen ambushed us once again. This time she was following us with her phone out, sometimes furiously typing and sometimes clearly recording us. She stayed a fair distance away, which made it awkward to confront her. I didn't want to start a screaming match in the middle of the neighborhood, but at the same time, what she was doing was not okay. The only reason I didn't yell at her to back off was because my son didn't seem to notice or care about her presence. If he'd been bothered, then Karen would not have gotten off so lightly, but I ended up ignoring her once again. Frankly, I have no idea if that was a mistake or not, because while things did escalate after that, I wonder if she might have even been more vindictive if I had confronted her. As it was, I started to hear rumors circulating around the neighborhood that someone was stealing. The rumors were pretty vague and nobody really seemed to know what exactly had been stolen. I knew that Karen was the source, of course. I also knew that she had intentionally spread these vague rumors so that the accusation would sound much more serious than it was. If she had told the truth and said that my son had been gathering rocks, then I don't think a single person would have taken her seriously. Fortunately, these rumors didn't get back to my kid, or if they did, then he never connected the dots and realized they were about him. Less fortunately, this is when Karen decided that her harassment was not effective enough, so she decided to escalate even further. About a week after I started hearing about the rumors from some neighbors I was friendly with, me and my son were out on a walk when Karen decided to confront us once again. This time she stood on the path and blocked us. When I took my son's hand and tried to guide him to the side of the path, Karen moved too and made sure we couldn't get by. I then tried to turn back with my son, but Karen stepped forward and grabbed him by the shoulder, demanding that he return all of the property that he had stolen. Unsurprisingly, this led to a complete sensory meltdown. My poor boy was so scared and he'd been handling it like a trooper, but he could only take so much before it overwhelmed him. I comforted him, but Karen looked shocked and stunned. I think everything might have been alright if she had backed off at that point, and maybe she would have learned her lesson and decided against tormenting us in the future, but who knows. Instead, in her panic, she decided to slap my boy right across the face. She was trying to shut him up, but that failed miserably, and then he started outright screaming. God, you have no idea how much I wanted to hit Karen at that point, but my boy came first. I put myself between the two of them and comforted him as much as I could, but he was in a bad way. Behind me, I could hear Karen have a meltdown of her own. She was shrieking, demanding that he put back the rocks right this instant, and then saying that he got what he deserved for being such a disobedient little boy. She even said that none of this would have happened if he had just done as he was told. Now, I didn't realize this at the time, but this entire incident had actually been witnessed by several neighbors from their homes. I guess it looked just as bad as it felt because not just one, but 3 separate neighbors ended up calling the police and informing them about the situation. I lost track of time at that point because I was completely focused on comforting my son and reassuring him that everything was alright. Fortunately, Karen did not try to attack him again and she kept her distance. I could hear her whining under her breath about how this was all my son's fault and my fault, but at least my son couldn't hear it while I was embracing him tightly. However, I did notice when the police cars arrived. They were not flashing their lights or using their sirens, but it was impossible to miss 2 police cruisers showing up on a quiet, empty suburban street. My son has always been interested in fire trucks, police cars and ambulances, so he perked up when he saw them. He didn't quite stop bawling completely, but it did get reduced to sniffling and just a bit of shaking. "What seems to be the matter, ma'am?" the first officer said as he got out of his car and approached us. As you might have expected, Karen immediately launched into a long-winded rant about how my son was stealing and a menace to the neighborhood, so of course she had no choice but to slap him, and that it was really his fault for being so disobedient. And yeah guys, how dare the son disobey authority figures like Karen? Such a naughty boy. The officers calmly listened to this and then asked what she meant about slapping him. I don't think Karen even considered the possibility that they might consider her a suspect, because when the police mentioned that the phone call was about a woman attacking a boy, she started shaking with fury. "Girls cannot be arrested for hitting a man," were her exact words, and I don't have the faintest idea where she learned that. The officers were just as confused and corrected her that women could most certainly be arrested for assault regardless of the genders involved, and especially if they had struck a minor. During this I tried to comfort my son even more, but he had fortunately mostly recovered. He still hid behind me, but he was watching the police with curiosity. One of the officers that wasn't busy with Karen even came over and had a chat with him about his rocks, which helped him relax a little bit, and soon enough he was gushing all over the cool ones he had found today. Of course, when Karen saw that, she started shrieking again, pointing at the rocks, saying he had stolen those. However, when the police asked her where he had stolen them from, she just sputtered and gestured everywhere at once with frantic waves of her arm. "So, let me get this straight," the first officer said. "This boy was out walking with his mom and gathering rocks, and then you came out here, confronted them, and slapped him? You don't understand, But Karen didn't get any further before the officer interrupted her. "And you know that he's out on these walks as a form of therapy for autism." He turned to me. "Did you inform her of that, ma'am?" I told her. I reassured him, several times in fact. "If she was a better mother and disciplined him more, then he wouldn't have autism," Karen shrieked. Everyone stared at her for a long moment, and then one of the officers wrote down exactly what she had said. "Ma'am, on top of aggravated assault, you could be looking at felony charges here." Karen just stared at him, completely unable to process what she had heard. She just stared stupidly as he pulled out his handcuffs. When they finally clicked into place and she was being escorted to the police car, she finally found her voice and started to aggressively insult us once again. Thankfully, most of her vitriol was directed at me this time, rather than my son, but I still covered his ears so he didn't have to listen to her filth. As she was being hauled away, she still couldn't believe any of this was happening, but she was about to be hit with a harsh dose of justice. Even when she was in the back of a police car with her hands cuffed, she was still screaming about how me and my spoiled son were the real criminals and that this was all a big mistake. In the end, she was brought before a judge and was sentenced to 18 months in jail, as well as probation. Her sentence might have been lighter, but I heard that she was just as defiant in court, and when her quotes from the arrest were read out loud, she lost all chance for mercy, since the judge also happened to have an autistic child. And to make matters even worse for Karen, since she was unable to work for those 18 months, she also got fired from her job and ultimately lost her house. When she finally was released, I heard that she aggressively contacted some of our other neighbors trying to figure out who had ratted her out. She thought this was all a conspiracy and that we had tried to ruin her life. Never for a single second did she consider that maybe she had brought all of this upon herself. In the end, we never saw Karen again. I thought I caught a glimpse of her car in the neighborhood shortly after her sentence ended, but I think she was very careful to avoid confronting us because that would mean violating the terms of her parole. I hope that she has become more thoughtful and a kinder person and that her sentence rehabilitated her, but who knows. And yeah guys, I think we all know that there's zero chance that a Karen like this would ever change. Either way, if you enjoy the Karen stories, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment because that would help me tremendously. The next one is a super satisfying petty revenge story that is titled Sharing My Dad's Petty Revenge Trick. So I once saw a neighbor littering on purpose in my building's garden. She basically threw some trash that was in her car into our hedge, so I picked the trash and put it on her windshield and lifted the wipers. Thinking naively that she would know someone saw her and then use a trash can next time, well, next morning the car left but the trash was laying on the parking spot, so I picked the trash up again and this time I took it home. A couple days later I saw the car again. I live in a densely populated area with many buildings, so I don't know exactly where she lives, and I decided to ask my dad for some advice. See, my father is a really vindictive person, but at the same time prudent. He once followed some a-hole who cut an elder lady at a gas station queue just to deflate his tires. Anyways, I asked him what I can do to her car without damaging it, but to make sure that she would be annoyed as hell, and he shared me his pettiest but harmless trick. Take a large zip tie, tie the two wipers in lifted position together, and tighten it as much as possible. I'm pretty sure my neighbor lives in a building, so she likely had to take the elevator back home to get some scissors. She was probably late for work that day, and of course I left a note and the trash. I'll never know if it ended up somewhere else, but the note stated that if I were to find the trash again, I would make damages next time. Pretty sure she is paranoid now. All of this to say this is a simple but effective way to annoy someone. I shared the trick with friends who had someone parking on their reserved spot and they used it effectively. Since the most common story I see on this sub is their neighbors parking in front of their driveway, I figured I would share it to y'all as well. And the next one is a really satisfying story that is titled Sorry sir, you cannot enter your building. Posted on r/malicious compliance. A few years ago I worked armed security at a hospital. The Greater Health System owned 3 large hospitals, each with a 24-hour trauma center. It had a couple smaller county hospitals and dozens of clinics scattered across 3 states. I worked at one of the bigger hospitals in a bad part of town. There were legitimate security threats on a daily basis here. One day I was told to stand at the main entrance and keep staff out. Me, huh? Apparently some middle management person wrote a new policy that staff members are to enter and exit the building through the west entrance only. The main entrance was to be used by patients and guests, and they didn't want employees cluttering the main entrance because, God forbid, people see medical staff upon entering a hospital. Well, my task was to stand at the door and tell nurses, doctors, cafeteria staff, facilities, janitors, etc. to use the west entrance. Anyone who refused had their name written down and would be reprimanded later. Now, I had other crap to worry about, like EDPs fighting people in the ER, or people running onto the helipad and taking a selfie with the live flight patient, or dudes on PCP yelling at the wheelchairs. Or, of course, the old woman with dementia who wandered off and cannot find her room. You know, actual security problems. The main entrance posting was a waste of my time and it dragged on for several days. Until one day, a man wearing a suit leading a gaggle of important people, all in business attire. The ringleader had an employee ID badge and was speaking enthusiastically to the group. They were heading straight for the main entrance. Me, sorry folks, gotta use the west entrance. Ringleader, what? Me, hospital policy, all employees must use the west entrance. Ringleader, we're going to use this entrance, as he points to the door. Me, okay, but I will need to take your names down. Your supervisor will be informed. Ringleader stares at me like the biggest idiot alive and holds his ID badge in front of my face for an uncomfortably long time. I took his name down and every single member of his gaggle with painful slowness. I should add that they were all very polite despite my obvious lack of F's to give. Shortly after, the security supervisor arrives. Supervisor, hey, how's it going? Me, not bad, I have a dozen or so names. And I show him the list. Supervisor, is that, he points to the ringleader's name. Me, I don't know. His badge said Chief Something Officer. He looked important. Supervisor, Chief Executive Officer? Me, yeah, I think that was it. Supervisor quickly walks away. It turns out the CEO of the health system was bringing a group of potential investors, the aforementioned gaggle, for a tour of the place. He was never informed of the main entrance policy change and was greatly embarrassed to be stopped at the entrance of his own hospital by some rent-a-cop. Suddenly, as if by magic, staff could use the main entrance again and I could return to actual security work. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. First of all, a slight preface. My wife and her brother were very close when young. He got very into alcohol and went to prison for 10 years and then went immediately back to drinking. He then died in front of her. My wife, 30, and I, 33, started going to the gym together. We were loving the results of the fitness, it made intercourse even better, and we could not keep our hands off each other. We felt as happy and close as ever. 3 weeks after her brother died, this guy chats her up at the gym and she immediately clicks with him. I was wary, but I trusted my wife. She is a sweetheart and never imagined her having the ability to have an affair. Last weekend we had one of the most romantic days and evenings we have had in a while. This week she decides that she cannot go on without finding out why she developed such a quick connection with this guy. We own a house and 3 pets, her family and everyone we know are devastated and blown away, but she is dead serious. The woman I knew last week even, has left the building. This is a living nightmare that I just want to wake up from. We did couples counseling 3 times and have one schedule on Wednesday, but she has completely made up her mind and seems to have rapidly fallen out of love with me. My life as I had known it is over. I just needed to get this all off my chest. Edit, thank you for the responses. I didn't expect such an outpour of support. I'm reading every comment. Relevant comments to the story. OP responded in regards to communicating with his in-laws and wife's parents and how they are dealing with the brother's passing. OP answered, I'm in daily communication with her parents, we are very close, they are as heartbroken as me and praying that she snaps out of it before irreparable damage is done. Unfortunately, that time is very close if it had not passed already and they understand that. Then OP responded in regards to if his wife has been diagnosed with any issues that might have affected her in a traumatic event situation. OP responded, she is not, her dad has bipolar, her grandpa has bipolar, both allegedly kicked in when around 30. Then OP answered in regards to if there were any sexual activities taking place between his wife and the involved individual from the gym, and OP said, about a month ago he went into where she works, library, and kissed her. Right after that she snapped out of the fog and realized this is crazy and told him that he needs to keep to himself and that was not okay. Things went great for 3 weeks and then she snapped right back into it. She swears that kiss is the only physical contact they've had though. I'm extremely dubious, but who knows. I was her first everything and she's pretty sexually nervous, not open about herself as a sexual being. Update to the story, I had a kind redditor reach out to me over the weekend asking how I was doing regarding the above situation. The original post got a lot of attention, so I figured I would give an update. My wife filed for divorce a month after moving out. During this time I did the whole online dating thing, which was way worse than I could have ever expected, kept myself busy working out, building my own confidence, and hanging out with friends. In general, it was horrible, but I was trying to keep my head up. I was in therapy, I did not jive with my first therapist, found a new one in December, who I liked a lot more, and I'm still seeing her. Mid-December, my wife calls me crying, asking if she can stay in the guest bedroom because she has nowhere to go. I say yes, even though she hurt me so badly, I did still love her, so things with guy at the gym turned very toxic very fast. I know the word narcissist gets thrown around a lot these days. This guy though, it's hard to believe people like him actually exist. So she stays in the guest bedroom for a week and then goes and stays at her parents for a month. She had a nervous breakdown and was able to get a medical leave of absence from her work. Mid-January comes around and she is back at the house. But still in a very frantic and erratic state, sort of like she was withdrawing off hard drugs. I had no idea about the addictive nature of toxic relationships. It's a psychological cluster F. She is clear that she's too effed up in the head to be in a relationship and is gonna work on herself. I give her the time and space she requested. She goes all in on learning about the psychology of all of this crap, inner child work, how the nervous system reacts and attracts you to toxic people if you grew up in a toxic household. Anxious and avoidant attachment styles. There is this book called How to Stay Married where the wife had an affair and it turns out the root of the issue was her unresolved childhood trauma. Long story short, same thing happened here. It hurts, but I can forgive her. She is my best friend and we are insanely compatible in a lot of ways. She has really been returning to herself the past month and she is the happiest I've seen in her at least a year, and last week we filed the paperwork to dismiss the divorce. We are both in individual counseling and soon to start couple therapy. I'm sure a lot of people will think I'm making a mistake in reconciling, but I'm actually happy. I do trust her that she now has the knowledge to not let this happen again, and she has the drive to become the best person she can be. Edit, I'm reading all the comments and taking everything to heart, even especially the ones calling me stupid, a chump or a doormat. I completely understand where you're coming from. I just don't have time or the desire to respond to so much. I want things to work out and I do trust my gut that this was a one-time thing. I'll post an update and take all of the "I told you so" if it comes to that. And yeah, Riper Stars, I'm really curious what you think about this story so far. Do you think OP made the right decision here or not? Honestly, if I would have been in OP's situation, there's no way I could have forgiven my wife. But maybe, how do you say it? OP might be the bigger man here than me, but it's just I would not be able to forgive someone for cheating. No matter what they went through previously, in my opinion, there's not a good excuse for that. But then again, props to OP for being so understanding. Let me know how you see it in the comments. Now we have some more relevant comments from Reddit and they say, what boundaries did you set? I'm asking because we only have a couple of posts for insight, and from what's there, it strongly implies that she has not accepted responsibility nor accountability for what she did to you. Man, she didn't just break your heart. She actually shattered and then stomped on the pieces. Healthy relationships need trust, respect, and boundaries. She violated all three in the most humiliating way. Is it possible you're just fleeing back into a safe space, aka your marriage that in reality doesn't exist anymore? Doesn't read like there's anything stopping her from doing this to you again. Good luck, man, but damn, what she did to you was beyond effed up, and the only thing worse would be if you were now raising his kid too. By the way, have you been intimate with her since? Have you gotten tested for STDs afterwards? You should, and if you have any kids, please test paternity so that your rights are protected. And then OP said, I have complete access to her phone anytime, individual counseling for her, and couples counseling for us. Basically, anytime I may even have a hint of suspicion of any sort of nefarious activity, I can investigate, no questions asked. This has not needed to happen because we spend nearly all our free time together or doing our own crap around the house. If we are not spending time together, she is reading self-help or watching self-help on YouTube. We work the same hours and we go to the gym together, we come home and what she did was beyond effed up. We are all on the same page with that. She says that what she did is unforgivable and that she is a huge piece of crap, a complete moron, and that I deserve better. I want to make things work for the sake of the life we built over 12 years, the beautiful home and land we own together, the vast array of common interests we have together. I want to continue building memories of love and laughter and fun like we did for 12 years. There is a lot that is important to me that can be saved if the work is put in. Her estranged brother dies in front of her while she is holding his hand, and then weeks later, this guy comes into her life and love bombs her while she is spiraling in grief. It's no excuse for what she did, but it's enough for me to give her at least some iota of grace that she was not in a sane and rational mind when this all went down. Yes, we've been having intercourse and no, we don't have kids. And yeah, Riper Stars, honestly, I don't know what to say about this story. I guess just that I would not have done the same as OP. And it seems like most of the comments on Reddit would agree with me. But then again, let me know what you think in the comments. The next one is titled Revenge on a Scammer. I am a new dad. I am sleep deprived and just feel sluggish all the time. After dropping my baby off with her grandparents, I saw an invoice on my email for $450 that I never paid to Norton Antivirus. It had a phone number to call, so I called it. As soon as I called, I realized it was a scam, but it sure as heck aggravated me. I pretended to be scammed up until the point where I would give my computer control to the scammers, which took a good 10 minutes. I spoke to Melvin after that. I told him he's a dumb scammer and he yelled at me. So I realized the number was still there. I have 2 Google Voice accounts I don't use anymore that I had for a prior job. So then I called them. I kept calling, I kept asking for Melvin, and sometimes I would get a new guy who did not know my game. Fortunately, I did not have anything urgent at work that day, so I kept calling. I called and called and called. At some point, one of the gentlemen let out an exasperated sigh saying, "Oh my god, it's you again." I did not relent, I kept calling. I called over and over and over and over again. I told as many of them as possible that their mothers are ashamed of them. I told them that their lives are worthless and wastes, and I kept calling and calling until I actually had work to do, and so I stopped. Today I woke up and called the number again. Today they were PayPal. I got Melvin again. We chatted before he told me to F off. I called again. I kept calling non-stop for about 30 minutes. After an hour break, I tried calling again, immediately blocked on all my numbers. I grabbed a family member's phone and immediately disconnected. I win. It was a small, insignificant battle, but I won. No one can call that number anymore until next time. And before we end the video, let's read another fantastic malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "They said all guests must sign in, so I made the CEO wait in the lobby until security approved him." So we got a new visitor policy last week. The email was bolded, underlined and said, "All guests must sign in and wait for security clearance before entering, no exceptions." Well, I work the front desk, and normally executives just walk through. But hey, the email said what it said, so when the CEO came in early for a board meeting, smiled and started heading for the elevator, I handed him the clipboard and said, "Sorry sir, I will need you to sign in and wait while I call it in." He looked confused, maybe a little amused, but sat down. Security took their time, 10 full minutes. The next morning we got a new email. It said, "Use discretion for executive level visitors." Go figure. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.